Hello everyone, and a good day to you all. I wanted to talk today about battle rifle or DMR type of considerations. I'm probably just going to be referring to it as a battle rifle throughout this video, but kind of the same similar concept, at least for the base rifle. I'm going to be talking about semi-auto, full rifle caliber rifles. In this case, I have a MR762, but I'm not going to be making any specific recommendations. I'm not going to be saying that everyone needs to go out and get an MR762 or even that it's the best DMR or battle rifle in the world. It is what I chose, but what I wanted to talk about in this video is, I'll talk about why I chose it, but I'm also going to cover mostly the criteria because I put a lot of consideration into this whole battle rifle idea. I've actually been thinking about purchasing just not necessarily this, but this type of rifle for about 2 years now. I've been just considering and saving, and ultimately did choose this one pretty recently, just a few months ago. I think the points themselves are going to be about the same, and I think they're good to know regardless of what option you go with. However, depending on your exact use case and how you're going to set it up and use it in your environment, how you weight and how much you care about some of these certain points will vary. So the very first one is pretty obvious, of course. I wanted a semi-auto. It's pretty much in the definition of being a battle rifle or a DMR, but I do know that there's a lot of full rifle caliber rifles out there that are still bolt action, and I really prefer semi-auto in just pretty much every case, even if it's just for hunting. But semi-auto. After that, the most important point that I was looking at by far is going to be the weight of the rifle. So in regards to the weight, I have taken this hunting, gone up mountains. This is by far not the lightest option. It is also by far not the heaviest option. I was looking, and really the biggest criteria that I was either deciding whether I should or should not get certain rifles was really dependent on the weight. A good example, I was pretty heavily considering the B&T APC 308, and that one is actually quite heavy. I believe it's starting weight of a 10.5 or 10.3 pounds, so really up there. This one is 9.6 pounds, also quite heavy, and that's how it comes from the factory. Now, you can actually lose about a quarter pound by just switching out the stock, because it comes with one of those E1, really kind of fat, quite a heavy stock too. If you switch to the slimline stock like I have on here now, it cuts an entire quarter pound. So that's really nice, and I would recommend it. And as I said, I have carried this up mountains, and it's fine. This is well balanced. One thing about the MR762 in particular is the older ones from, I believe, 2021 and before. There's an exact serial number that I can find when they did the switch over, but they used to have a heavy profile barrel on here. Now they have a light profile, and some people call it a medium profile. It's not like a pencil barrel, so I think it is more accurate to call it a medium contour barrel, but it is a lot nicer, a lot lighter. I did handle, right when they first came out, I handled some MR556s in a gun store, and I remember that they felt so ungodly front heavy, because both the MR556s and the MR762s back then had those heavy barrels. And there is advantages to having heavy barrels. If you want to go more of a DMR route, maybe you would want to seek out one of those heavy barrels, and they're not that hard to find. Those slightly older MR762s that have that heavy barrel, and you can pick them up and have them rebarreled as well. But for me, I absolutely did want the lighter contour barrel. It saves a lot of weight and is just much more well balanced overall. But I do think weight is probably the most important factor, especially around where I am. There is a ton of mountains that I go up, and I didn't want to be hauling an extremely heavy rifle and just get into position and not be able to even fire it, because I'm just so tired from carrying it and have my shoulders sore and everything. And part of it is like bulk up and all of that, but a lighter rifle will always be better. Now, do be careful to don't take this to an extreme where you're getting like a ultra lightweight, like a match competition type of rifle. You'll still want to make sure that you still have something that is durable, but wherever possible, where you can save weight and not compromise the strength of the rifle, I would say to absolutely go for it. As far as some other rifle considerations, I was seriously looking at the SCAR 17, because that is a phenomenally light 308 rifle. It's quite cool. I kept hearing reports that they have issues with the optics breaking, though, something with the recoil impulse and how the operating system works on there. So I don't know if they ever fixed that. I know that there were a lot of initial issues with the SCAR that they did fix over time, but I just didn't want to risk it, because good optics are quite expensive, and I don't want to be replacing a bunch of optics. I know you can get like an Alcan, for example, and those are totally fine with that rifle. I don't know if you need to look at certain mounts if you want to get other optics that are that are SCAR rated, but I just didn't want to take that risk. It's a lot simpler to just not have to worry about the rifle destroying my optic. And two other rifles that I did consider that are pretty common, of course, the HK 91 or the PTR 91, as well as the FAL. DS Arms makes a pretty good clone from what I've heard. And I considered both of them, but ultimately those also had a little bit of an issue. They're actually not too bad, but once you do modernize them, they can get a little bit heavier. There were a few other reasons why I didn't pick those, which I'll get to later. Let's go ahead and move on to the next point now, which is the reliability. And this is kind of going to factor in as well with why I specifically chose this over, for example, an AR-10. So I know there's a lot of internet wars about like what is more reliable. Is a short stroke gas piston more reliable, as is on here, or just direct gas impingement or internal piston if you want to be technical, and actually it's internal piston. Either way, what I'm more so referring to is specific manufacturers, i.e. I didn't want to get a really shoddy rifle that, even if on paper like everything might work fine with it, I didn't want one that is just shit and would fall apart. Of course, HK is pretty high end, so I'm not too worried about that happening here. But I was also very specifically looking, since I am talking about the operating mechanism, I was very much wanting a piston driven. The reason for that, even though I don't have it yet because it's still an NFA jail, I do want to be able to suppress this. I have an adjustable gas block and everything. I'm just waiting on that to clear. So that is a major consideration of mine, and I didn't want to get too much gas in the face. Since the MR762, and I don't know because I haven't shot this suppressed yet, but I have heard that both this and the MR556, since they are pretty overgassed, I have heard that even though this is a piston driven, that you still get some gas, less for sure than on a DI gun, but still apparently some gas in the face. So we'll see, and I do suspect that those adjustable gas blocks will fix that issue, but I'll let you know when I actually get that suppressor. Again, this goes back to how you want to use it. The piston systems are always going to be heavier. It's just how it is. They're always going to be heavier than a DI gun because there's just less large, heavy moving parts. So going back to my first point of the weight, if you really want to make a super lightweight rifle and you're not concerned about suppressing it at all, I would say absolutely go with a DI because it will be lighter. It'll be a lot more pleasant to haul it around, and it is reliable. As I said, there are some advantages in reliability to both systems, and it really just depends on your environment. I'm not worried. As long as the rifle itself is built well, I'm not worried about either system having any issues. Let me go ahead and move now to the precision, or commonly referred to as accuracy. I was looking for about a 1.5 MOA rifle. This is actually sub MOA with 5-shot groups. Usually I shoot about 1.2 MOA, and that's measuring actual 10-round groups, and that's great. I have no issue with that. I wanted to be able to hit like a torso-sized target out to approximately 800-ish yards, and this can definitely do that. Has no issues doing that whatsoever. In regards to that kind of criteria, I was very heavily considering, as I said earlier, the FAL. I have heard a lot of people say that that's really not that accurate though. And I was also, quite a while ago, considering a 308 AK. Those have some parts availability, actually major parts availability issues, but also they didn't really have the accuracy I was looking for either. But the reason I wanted that specific accuracy is because in my area, as I said earlier, it's pretty mountainous. Well, really it's either super mountainous or it's super open, and it's just, it really depends on which direction I go. But I can either go to like a sagebrush steppe, it's not too distant from me, or if I go the opposite direction, for about the same amount of time, I'm in the mountains and I can see for miles in either case. So I wanted something that would work either way. Now, if you're somewhere where you're going to be, the furthest you can fire is maybe a couple hundred, I would not worry too much about this being like 1.5 MOA. You could probably go with an FAL then. Usually, from what I've heard, is about like 3 or 4 MOA, which is pretty similar to the 308 AKs as well. Depends on which exact one you get, but it really just depends on that. And for my area, when I can see so much further, I did want this. And it's the same reason why I wanted a battle rifle in the first place, something that can reach a little bit further than 5.56 can and still both accurately hit it and also still have power at that range. Which is a very good note for me to move on to my next point of the ammunition. So I know a lot of people with these types of rifles are moving towards 6.5 Creedmoor. 6.5 Creedmoor is definitely pretty much in every way better than the 308. However, the reason I went with 308 is I really actually was specifically looking for a 308 because I already had some 308 on hand. Second of all, it is cheaper. Now, this might change in the future. If you're watching this years in the future, maybe by then 6.5 Creedmoor will become even more common and it's just easier to pick up then. But at least right now, 762x51 NATO or 308 is just, I can find it anywhere and it's really not that expensive. Like, it's easy to stockpile just a bunch of surplus M80. That's still reliable and all good as well. And somewhat related to ammo, another point I was considering is the barrel length. So when I was selecting a battle rifle, I was looking for about, I did want about a 16 to 18 inch barrel. I didn't want 20 or above. I felt like that would get a little bit too long. And below 16, even if there wasn't the legal limitations on it, I didn't really want that short of a barrel for a 308. I wanted to kind of, I looked at a lot of charts of 308 performance based on different barrel lengths, and it seems like 16 is kind of right before it starts to really drop off. You can go a little bit shorter and still be fine, but when you start getting quite a bit shorter, you really start to see a significant drop off in the performance and the muzzle velocity. Another good rifle I was looking at, and actually this is another one that might end up being more popular in the future in regards to ammo, I was looking at the SIG SPEAR, because back when I first started looking at this whole battle rifle thing, that hadn't even been released yet. It had been announced and I was really interested in it. It looked really good. When it came out, ultimately I was shocked yet again by the weight, and I was like, no way. But also it has a 13-inch barrel, and with the 6.8 round that they're using there, the new 277 Fury, it probably will work better because it's designed for that shorter barrel. But yeah, it was just overly heavy for the barrel length, and those SIG Spears, maybe they'll go down in price, but they make HK look inexpensive, because those SIG Spears are currently about $7,000 and $8,000. The last point I wanted to talk about, and then I'll get to just some more miscellaneous things that I was considering just here and there as I was going through these. The last major point though is parts availability, spare parts availability. So this is a huge reason why I didn't end up picking up any of those 308 AKs, because they are so rare and it is so hard to find parts in case anything does go down on them. Now, not much will go down on my Wasser, which isn't a 308, but I've only ever had to replace the firing pin, and I'm probably going to need to replace the extractor pretty soon, but parts usually don't break. AKs are pretty sturdy. However, in the event anything ever does, I don't want to have literally no other options. With this, the MR762, you can use most 417 parts, and they are not too hard to find. They are expensive. They're certainly expensive, but they are possible. It's another reason why I also didn't pick up an FAL, because there's the metric and inch magazines, and magazines are a little hard to find. Other parts don't seem as bad, but it's another reason why I didn't go with that one. But I'm able to find spare bolts. I'm able to find a bunch of spare, bolt parts, and pretty much everything is readily available. Just, it is expensive, so keep that in mind. If you want to save a bit of money, AR-10, the LR308, the 308 ARs, they're definitely a lot easier to find parts for. But the parts availability was definitely a very big concern of mine, even though I did rank it the lowest. As I said, it's kind of hard to rank these. But I was looking at a lot of good battle rifles that seemed very promising, but I was just very concerned about spare parts. Another one I was very, very close to picking up was the POF Revolution. I believe it's the Revolution, but they have a AR-15, so full AR-15 upper and lower receiver. Well, they had to modify the lower to have the correct mag well for 308, but they did manage to put a 308 into an AR-15, which is pretty awesome as far as spare parts is concerned for most spare parts. One part I was concerned about is if I get any sheared lugs or any issues with the bolt or bolt carrier, is how would I replace that? Because I haven't seen anyone make, and maybe you can pick them up because I didn't look too far into it, maybe you can pick up replacement bolts and bolt carriers from POF themselves. But that is why I didn't go with them. That was a little bit of a concern of mine. And I heard some people complaining about accuracy, but those may have just been lemons, so I'm not sure. But if you do go with a AR-10 or one of those 308 ARs, just keep in mind that there are a lot of different variants. They never saw the same level of standardization that the AR-15 did. So even if you do go with one of those, just keep in mind that most of the parts are still going to be, you'll have to make sure to pick up the right versions of them. And talking about parts, one other thing I did want to mention is magazine compatibility. So one thing about the MR762 417 is they do use a proprietary magazine, which I've done quite a few videos on. These do have some advantages. They have a very blatant disadvantage, one being that you can't put them in any other of the 308 ARs, which generally, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a standard, but by and large, a lot of these 308s do use the SR25 pattern of magazine. If you're hand loading, you can pull the bullets out further on this because they're a way larger magazine. Also makes it really difficult to find mag pouches, though possible. It is very, you have to hunt a bit, but it is doable. And the advantage of that is it's just more room to play with the bullet seating, which allows you to mess around more with the finding a harmonic node when you are hand loading and getting better precision that way. Now, I did mention earlier that I already owned some 308 before this, which is a big reason why I went with it over 6.5 Creedmoor, but I didn't own any magazine-fed 308, so really this wasn't a concern of mine, making sure that it would be compatible with all my other rifles or anything like that, so getting into having to pick up a bunch of 417 magazines was not really an issue. One thing about this, though, is you are limited to 20 round magazines at most. They make 20s, 10s, and then 5s, and I think occasionally, maybe it's just in Europe, they make smaller ones as well. But yeah, the biggest you can find is a 20, whereas I know on the SR25 pattern of magazines, you can get like drum mags and all of that sort of thing, which is pretty cool. Then the last thing that I did want to talk about that was more of a small, I mean, it's still important as well, but one thing I was very much considering on all of these rifles was the barrel material and how well made is the barrel. In the case of this HK MR762 barrel, do keep in mind, if you are familiar with the 417, that has a fluted chamber to aid in extraction. Even though it's not a roller blade, they do actually have a fluted chamber on there. However, the MR762 is just a normal, completely standard chamber. No weird things going on there. But as far as the barrel itself, this is a, they make the barrel in Germany, and HK barrels are generally pretty well known for being very durable. However, one of my concerns, and one thing I really wish I did have on this, was a chrome line barrel. All of the civilian MR556, MR762 in the US, actually the European models don't have the same stipulation for some reason, which is pretty dumb. But none of these are chrome lined. They are treated, but no chrome lining, which people will say, some people will say it's important, some people will say it's not. If I have a choice, I'm always going to choose chrome lined. I would greatly prefer to have that. If it's not chrome lined, it just means you do need to take care of it a bit better and be a bit more careful about mag dumping it. I'm not using this for mag dumping, so it's all good in that regard. But it is a bit of a concern, and it's just something to kind of need to give it a bit more care in this regard. But I was reading a lot about the barrel material on a lot of the other guns that are manufactured. The DS Arms is chrome lined, which is pretty cool, those FALs. The PTR was, I was a little skeptical of their barrel quality, but there's a lot of good options as far as if you really want a chrome lined barrel and that's one of your higher priorities, you can definitely find those. It's not impossible. But it does seem like they're rarer than on their 5.56 counterparts. And that's it. Those are my points that I really focus on when I'm picking up this type of rifle, or when I was in the market for one. Ultimately, it's all just a bunch of compromises. You need to find what will work best for you. There's, as I said at the start, there is absolutely no way that you're going to find one that is absolutely perfect in every way, that has like a match quality, chrome lined barrel that's also just pinpoint accurate, that's also going to be super lightweight and still allows you to suppress without getting gas in your face and everything like that. So just take these points into consideration: the weight, the precision, the reliability overall, which should be a given as long as you're buying from a reputable manufacturer. The magazine type, spare parts availability, just taking all of that stuff that I talked about in this video into consideration, and regardless of what you choose, it'll probably be a pretty good choice for what you want it for and what you're looking for. Other than that, just keep in mind that if you are looking for this type of rifle, that you are going to have less ammo compared to a 5.56 or 5.45. In my case, I have a more or less identically set up chest rig for my AK and with this, and I carry a little bit less than half the same ammo capacity on the same amount of space and everything. So just be aware of that. Be aware of the other limitations of the battle rifles in general, and should be good to go. One last question I did want to address is why get a battle rifle at all? The reason for that is I'm kind of viewing this from like an SHTF angle. So if you're using this as a survival rifle, at least for around here in my area, as I said, pretty much anywhere I go, it is very easy to see extended distances. So this does help me to still be able to reach out quite a bit further. And additionally, one other thing I do quite like about this is this can serve a dual purpose as a hunting rifle. Now, while you can hunt some game in North America with a 5.56. It's a lot more hard. It can be done. You still need to place your shots pretty well and all of that, but you can hunt a lot more, pretty much most game in North America with a 308, and it works quite well for that. So that is a huge reason for that, is it serves such an excellent dual purpose. But going back to the whole SHTF angle of this, do keep in mind this isn't so much more powerful than a 5.56 and it's going to penetrate body armor or anything like that. You would still need to find the correct rounds, which same would go for 5.56, so it's really no different there. So don't think that you're getting like a really just insanely powerful rifle. They are more powerful, don't get me wrong, but they don't have that sort of power behind them. Thank you all for watching, and let me know if you have any other questions, or if you think I missed anything that if you have your own battle rifle, or actually this could be pretty well applied to most other rifles as well, then let me know. We'd love to hear if you have other things that you all look for when you're picking up these sorts of rifles. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one. Like so, right there. What are you doing, Ruby? You have to be right there? Okay, if that's what you want to do. Should go closer to me. Hey Ruby, what are you doing? So in this video I wanted to talk about my own points of consideration when choosing this type of rifle, and how I weighted them. Now, depending on your own environment and what you want to use the rifle for, these points will be changed. But I think